It's just to mention that the next two Sundays are Hanukkah, so we're not going to have Shurim uh, the next two Sundays. Next year will be 3 weeks from today, which is December 28th. 28th. That's Bezrat Hashem. Okay, we'll finish up the shir that we were on last time. Try to explain it a little bit more clearly. Maybe we did, maybe explained well enough, maybe we didn't, but we thought about it a little bit more. And then we'll try to move into the next year. Bezrat Hashem. Okay, so last time we were skipped around a little bit because I wanted to get to the punchline, but we'll go back and go over some of the details. So we'll go back to page Peches, Pechet. That's on page Ches, Peches, excuse me. And as we said several times already, I'll just repeat it again because that's the essence of this year. And the Peches, the first paragraph. ונמצא שהאמינות והרשות שניהם יונקים את המציאות מאותו מקור של חיסרון. They both derive their existence from the same source of lack. ויש אפשרות לתפוס את המציאות כמינוס או כמלכוס. Those are the options. That's the two options that those are the two worlds that we could live in. A person could choose to live in a world of minus or a world of malchus. וכיוון שביארנו ששורש החיסרון הוא בלי גבול, that it's an infinite שורש of the חיסרון, שהוא האין סוף שהסתלק בחלל, because the חיסרון is because of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinity leaving a space. So therefore the space is infinite. לכן שתי אלו הם החסרונות הגדולים בבריאה. So this is the two different ways of looking at the chesronot. באופן שכל כופר אמיתי לעולם לא יהיה שבע. So therefore, every true kofar, I can imagine a true kofar, meaning that through and through, that he denies anything that can come from beyond this world. לעולם לא יהיה שבע, he'll never be satisfied. כי הוא רוצה להשלים חיסרון של אין סוף במציאות מיני ובי. וזה לא שייך. He's trying to complete a infinite chisaron from the reality that exists from within itself. And that's impossible. You can't fill something from within itself. You can't, because what exists in this gap, in this space that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, is finite. Right? And so to use finite existence in order to fill an infinite hole, that's something that can't be done. ועל זה אומרת הגמרא שכל שבוע בין דבר הרשות והמינות יהפכו להיות דבר אחד. So you remember, Malchus means that we look to, right, a source of existence beyond the world that we live in. We look at the world that we live in and we say, this world is lacking, this world doesn't have all of the things that it could have, that it should have, and we have to fill that gap. Well, how are we going to fill that gap? It must be that being, Baruch Hu, who withdrew his existence to make space for us, so he will, right? He is the only being that is capable of filling the gap. So we have to turn to him and say, okay, right, you removed your presence from the world. Right? You created a world where your presence is not obvious. It's not immediately. It's possible to think that you're not here. It's possible to think that one can get along without you, right? But I know better, and I know that in order for me to exist, I have to call upon a source of existence, which is you, and bring in that which is lacking from you back into the world. I need to bring you back into the world. There was that lack, that chisaron that was created by HaKadosh Baruch Hu's removal from the world. So it's our job to reverse that. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. He says, I'm going to remove myself, create a vacuum, create a space, and that is going to be the avoda of the people, of my creations, to bring me back into that space. And so we say, okay, that's our avoda. So if we're lacking anything, so we know where to turn to. We're on page Peches again, Jory. Okay. right? Right. That's where we turn to. The Minos, right, says there's no place else to turn except to the world itself. The world, right, is lacking, and so it must be, says the Minos, that the world itself contains that which is necessary to fill itself, to fill the gap, and that's something that'll never happen because, right, and that's what he's saying here. But Klomar, right? במקום שהמלכוס תתמלא מהתוכן של עצמה, meaning that the malchus, what's lacking here? What's lacking here, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu withdrew, what's lacking is malchus, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in the world, which is the malchus, right? So what's lacking here, so what should be is the malchus will be titmalei me'atochen shel atzma. It'll come back. The malchus will be that which HaKadosh Baruch Hu withdrew with his malchus will come back into the world. So that's the way that's malchus. But what Minos is going to do, what Minos does, is himamida et etzem kiyumal chisaron. It says no, that my existence is based on the fact that there is a lack, there is a need. Right? Here's the point that I want to explain a little bit more clearly. But I'll say, let's read another sentence. Kach kishe'etzem malchus benuya lachisaron. Right? The malchus is based on chisaron, meaning v'zeh sod hamalchus or revis malchus edom. Right? And this is the malchus. This is the world that we live in. Ubazehi shona mikol hamalchus shekodmu lo. We're talking about abstract things. We have shar lavi al zeh mishalim. B'chol ofen nuchal lekabel tzir kol shel advarim mitoch hazel b'chaim shelanu hayom. And he talks about the Western culture. Let's read it again. Right? But I'll just tell you the mashal that I thought of. This idea, people need to need. Right? That's something that's an inherent part of our culture. Right? If a person would find himself not needing anything, he wouldn't know what to do with himself. Right? I don't need anything. Right? So now, what next? Right? A mashal, it could be a lot of mashal. He talks about beten rishayim techsar. He talks about the fact that the stomach of the Russia is lacking. What does he mean? Says the Vilna Gaon, as we saw it last time. It means that the Russia doesn't have enough stomachs, because imagine that a person, right, had a normal meal, right, and then all of a sudden he's invited to a big wedding. Right? Forgot about it, right? He finished dinner, right? And then his wife said, "Oh, look at the calendar. The Goldbergs are making a wedding tonight, and we got to go." And so he goes to the Goldberg wedding, and he's beten rishoyim techsar, right? He just feels miserable, right? I don't need to eat, right? If I don't need to eat, so then what am I doing here, right? I mean, I got all this food here, right? Or another morsel that I thought, let's say a guy's really into electronic, gadgets and things, and he's got all the things that he could want. He walks excitedly into the store, and he turns around, he looks through the whole store, and he discovers that he has everything that's in the store. There's nothing that he needs. Right? He's got everything that's there. They haven't come out with anything new since the last time he went to the store. He's got everything in the store. He's going to be very disappointed, right? Because he has a need to need. He has a need to get something beyond himself, right? And this happens in our lives. If you just think in terms of sometimes we have a need to get news, right? So people twirl the dial of the radio or something. There's nothing on. I need to hear something. I need some input. I need some news. There's nothing there. Right? Because I don't need it. Right? And when I don't have, you're looking on your computer. You're surfing your computer, and there's nothing interesting, right? So and you're disappointed, right? And so that's a need to need, and that's the foundation of our culture. That if you don't, that a person who's not chaserlo, that's chaserlo that he's not chaserlo, right? It's chaserlo, right? Right? As opposed to because that's the idea that you're trying to fill something which you're trying to fill from a source, and nothing, and that source isn't capable of filling you. So you're always going to need something else because the source didn't fill you, right? Right? And that's the opposite of right, of the malchus. He says, as Ramosha says here, right? Right? Western culture. Western culture is going with what to deliver the kingdom to the Melech HaMashiach. נראה שכל התרבות וכל הכלכלה של העולם מתקיימים על יצירת צרכים חדשים. It's all about creating new needs. Because people who don't have new needs, right, are umlal, right? They're upset, they're disappointed. Bli gvul bli tachlis. Zohi tarbut shel hav, right? So this is a type of hav. In other words, we said in the beginning, the Gemara says that we have the two leeches. Remember, Minus and Malchus are the two that are clamoring, hav, give. But this hav is ba'ofen she'etzem achiv v'nekudat hamerkaz shalem mistovev olam hu achisara. Right? There's a hav meaning it's not because I need to have a chisar. The good hav is give because I have needs and you can satisfy my needs from a source beyond me. But if I have to satisfy this from within the world itself, so then it means that I'm living in a world where chisaron is the axis upon which everything revolves. Lo tamid ze yakacha. He says it wasn't always that. Pama yu chayim me'ah shana b'oto makom, b'oto bayit, b'oto tzura. People didn't need anything new. Right? People didn't look for news. They didn't look for excitement. They didn't look for new adventures. They didn't look for new experiences. Right? But that wasn't part of it. Today, a person needs new experiences. Right? You need to go to to visit exotic places. Right? Why do you have to go touring? Why do you have to go to places that which are exotic? Because because there's an emptiness. Right? There's something that you don't have, right? and you're just not happy, not needing something. Right? If I stay home, then I'm not satisfying any needs. I'm not taking anything for myself, right, from the outside. That carries everything. If I'm lacking this, so then, okay, and I fill this, I got a new chisaron. This is what it means. Ben David is going to come when Malchus starts equaling minus. Right? The meaning that instead of having a distinct hav of Malchus as opposed to the hav of minus, right? The Malchus itself is going to be a Malchus which its hav is the hav of minus itself, and that's the culture that we live in. And now he brings us a little bit into Parshas Shavua. Tokef midazu. This paragraph we did not read last time, but so let's read it now inside. Tokef midazu matzano etzel Esav shu avia umazu. Kasher. Okay, so he takes it in the direction of kasher. Tachlit midato hu Amalek. Shasat smoelohus. Right, as we saw yesterday in the parsha, at the end of the parsha, Amalek is the grandson of Esav. Right, he made himself into a god. Because Haman is the spitz of Amalek. V'zeu bemet the Vartema. Right? Haman haya malei otzarot kekorach. He says Haman was the wealthiest person like Korach, and he brings in footnote number 10, he brings a medrash. Shnei ashirim amdu ba'olam, echad miyisrael v'echad mi'ulat ha'olam. There were two wealthy people, right, who stand in the world. Right, one Jew and one goy. Korach mi Yisrael v'Haman mi umas ha'olam. U'shneim nevdu min ha'olam l'mashe lo hayu b'tarasa min HaKadosh Baruch Hu elachot v'masam lehem. The Gemara says the message is, right, the musar of the medrash is that neither of them were able to make much use of their wealth. Right, as we know what happened to Korach, we know what happened to Haman, because they did not receive it as a Baruch, as a matana from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Okay, that's already, for our purposes, that's parenthetical, because the point that Ramesh is making is that Haman was the wealthiest person on the earth. Right? He didn't. It wasn't enough. Right? He had. What did he need to do? He had to make himself into a god. What does it say in the Megillah? ויספר להם את כבוד עושרו ורוב בניו ואת כל אשר גידלו המלך ואת אשר נישאו על השרים ועבדי המלך. He gathered together his family and his wife, and he told them, and he recounted his wealth and his sons, and the fact that he had been elevated by the king and way above all the other ministers and the servants of the king. And then comes along Havan with a very interesting statement. V'chol zeh eino shoveli. And this is not worth anything to me. It's not worth anything to me. Whenever I see Mordechai sitting in the gate of the king, and he doesn't, it says Mordechai lo kam v'lo zav, Mordechai didn't get up, didn't move, right? That's not worth anything. Vein elu divrei hitul, right? In other words, Moshe divrei hitul would mean is that we're not just making fun of Haman. He told like a joke, right? It's not like, oh, it's an exaggeration. It's something that we're saying about Haman. Look how stupid Haman is. No, this was written in Baruch HaKodesh, meaning that Baruch HaKodesh. This is emes. This is what Haman felt to the depths of his heart. If it was written in the Megillah, al kolponim ze dugma lemashe. To swallow to the end, as long as the corner of the world that he hasn't yet swallowed, okay? If you want to see an interesting footnote, yeah.
I don't know how a field you want to go, but because this is definitely going afield. But like I'm hearing this and I'm thinking about the Yetzer Hara. And I'm wondering if they're equivalent, and then we're supposed to use our Yetzer Hara to attain spiritual. For example, in the spiritual realm, Hav is positive, right? In a way, right?
Yeah, yes.
And so we've got this. It seems like we're not talking about that here. I mean, even if we are in a way. I mean.
Again, I don't know what I don't want to go, as you say, go too far afield. But he's saying, remember, Malchus also says hav. Whereas hav is not inherently possible, right? Hav of Malchus, meaning hav when we turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right, and we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need you. We need you, right, we experiencing chisaron in our lives and in the world that we live in. And we need your presence here, because when your presence will be manifest here, then those chisronot, those lacks will disappear, right? That's a positive hav, right? That's a yearning for a greater connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Am I wrong? I think I never had a full understanding of how the Malchut is a leech as opposed to making Hashem our Melech.
The Malchus of this world, what he means to say is the Malchus of this world means that the Malchus knows where to turn to fulfill its needs. In other words, the Malchus that, again, as Moshe said at the beginning of this year, the Malchus that we're talking about here is what we speak about as the government, as the rulers. We're not right. We're talking about Goyim, whoever it is. But when it's done properly, right, it looks to a source outside of itself. Right? So it means that it experiences that we can't fulfill our own needs from within ourselves. There has to be something outside of us which needs to be brought in order to fulfill the needs of the world. Right? That's what he said. The Malchus collects taxes, right? Because that's also a positive kind of hav. Right? We need to bring in things from the outside. We don't have enough. We have to bring in things, right? That's the idea that he's saying here. So the negative hav is that we don't look to anything outside of ourselves in order to satisfy our needs. We don't look to anything. We're perfectly self-contained, self-sufficient. Right? We can do it right? We have right. There's no need to as the Apicorus scientist said when asked about his belief in God, he says, "I have no need for that hypothesis."
And yet at the same time, he's in a world where he never satisfied, where it's inherently needing. So even though he says that, he doesn't feel that.
Again, because he's always reaching for the next because that's the point. The point is that it's a hunger which is insatiable. Right? Right? That is exactly the point between an insatiable hunger and one that leads to a sense of satisfaction. Right? And even in Ruchnius, we have to understand that even though right, we're always striving for more Ruchnius, but Ruchnius itself has the power to be satisfying. In other words, Ruchnius is something which becomes part of us and satisfies us. Right? So even though we can use that as a plateau for higher things, right? But in Ruchnius, we're not just needing more and more, swallowing up more and more, and always feeling empty. In Ruchnius, we can feel satisfied. We can feel that we've accomplished something because we have accomplished a certain degree of closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The HaKadosh Baruch Hu has become part of our existence, our reality. It could be more. That has to be deepened. It has to be brought to newer levels. But when you come to newer levels, right, you're not just treading water, right? You know, the guy who goes from $1 million to $2 million hasn't gone to a new level, right? Because he's just as poor, he's just as unhappy, and just as feels lack of satisfaction with the 2 million that he had with the 1 million. Right? But a guy who learns two mesechtas and knows them well is a guy has one mesechta plus another mesechta. Right? Now he wants a third Seder, but at the end of the day, he's going to have three, right? But the guy who has $3 million is not going to have anything more than the guy who started out with nothing. Okay. Seder? That's good. Good. So let's move on again. So then he says, this I mentioned last time, I don't fully understand this paragraph, but let's read the next paragraph together. But Malchus Haravias, just from a historical point of view, maybe you can help me to put it together. Right, at the bottom of Peites, right? V'lachein, Pam hakavod haya nimsa eitzel malachim, avol b'malchus haravias hakavod v'hape'er avar ladat. Right. What he's talking about, and I think I understand, is that he's talking about when we talk about the Malchus Haravias is Rome. Okay. Right. And the Ikar Kavod, right, in the Roman world and in the Malchus Haravias world, right, is the Pope. Right? Right? The Pope has much more kavod than any king ever had. Right? Okay. Okay. That's I think that's what he's trying to say. The meaning is that the kavod is and that's not real Malchus, right? Because the Pope isn't king of anything, right? I mean, not. What was it? How many troops? How many divisions does the Pope have? Right, as somebody once said. Right, the Pope he's not a melech, right, in terms of any way that we would normally identify as a melech, right, right. And yet that's where the kavod goes. He says kavod. He says as opposed to other empires where it wasn't where the emperor, the king, was the source of kavod, right? Was the makar of kavod. But he says no. But in the fourth malchus, it went to religion. Aval malchus atzma nederet kavod. The malchus has no kavod. Ve'abiur kipama malchus lakal atzma et hakavod hamiyuad le'elokut. Because at one time, right, the malchus took for itself that kavod which was destined, which was determined to be for the God, for divinity. Aval kisha malchus nepechet leminus ukfira, he akra et atzma me'akavod. So the malchus uprooted itself from kavod. V'hi chaya al haminus. Right now it's Right? Now the Malchus itself is a different kind of thing. It's without the actual kavod, v'silika kavod. Alaminas v'silika kavod. Ve'lachein hayom ein metziut shel kavod. Right? Okay. And just okay, let's just look at footnote number Yud Aleph, that evidently an aside that Ramosha said at the time. Ve'adraba, hakavod nitan lemishi yoter chaser. Kavod today is given to the guy who is the most chaser. B'derech mashal. It says Ramosha said about himself. Lilo chaser sfinat tiyulim. I'm not. I'm not lacking. I'm not chaser a yacht. I don't. It's not chaser li. Aval linichbara gadol chaser b'li gvul. But to the biggest, to people today are nichbad, there's chaser b'li gvul. So a guy who's got a yacht of of X feet long, 100 feet long, he wants a yacht of 200 feet long, right? Because that's what after you've had 100. So then, well, what's the next step? Next step is 200. Next step is I don't know, the Queen Mary. But והיום ככל שחסר לאדם יותר, כך הוא יותר נכבד. Right? The more that a person is chaser, he's looking for more. He's looking for more, right? What are you trying to do, right? What is Trump trying to do? He's trying to all the big businessmen, right? Right? That's right. I'm chaser, $1 billion deal. I've already made enough, half $500 million deals, to fill a lifetime, right? But now, so I'm less. I need to start making $1 billion deals because, or whatever the appropriate numbers are, because I'm lacking, right? Oh, you're in the league of needing to make this, $1 billion deal. Wow, you're a real nichbad. Because I'm only in the league of needing to make $1 million deal. So I'm a schlump, and you're the nichbad because you need to make bigger deals, right? Just to satisfy your need to make deals. Yeah. That's what he has to say. And let's turn the page. Okay, we read this. We'll read this again. Ze nora litbonei. Ech kol haolam talui b'tzira shel tzrachim chadashim. ובדרך משל, he says the משל, אם בני אדם יחליטו שאין צורך במכונית חדשה כל שנה, if people would decide that we don't need to buy a new car every year, וכדומה, רוב בתי החרושת יפסיקו לעבוד, והעולם כולו יתמוטט. Most of the factories would stop working and the world would collapse. באופן שמה שמחזיק את העולם זה הצורך בלי סוף. People need to buy another car, right? Okay, if you need, okay, and then everything has to all the other things that go into making cars. ואם בני אדם יחליטו שמקום לרדוף אחר צרכים חדשים, נשב בבית ונלמד עוד ספר, הכל יתמוטט. Right? Just imagine every time we have this need, and I'm trying to, I speak to myself as much as I'm speaking to other people, the need to follow the news and see what's going on, so I tried this experiment. I tried it today. It's not a good experiment, right? Instead of impulsively and compulsively, turning on the radio to listen to the news, I was eating dinner, waiting for dinner to be ready. I opened the sefer. I said, "Wow, what a great idea!" Right? You know what I can accomplish in the 10 minutes that. Right? Yeah. So besides so first of all, you cut out all the garbage, right? So I kept my brain clean, for an extra 10 minutes, right? And secondly, so then again, we all have these compulsive kinds of things that we do because we need something new, we need something more. I have to hear what's going on, right? I have to hear what happened to in the Supreme Court in Israel today or whatever. I need to hear, right? I need to hear what did Trump do to Netanyahu today. I need to hear, right? What do I need to hear? Absolutely no reason, but that's it. Yeah. Okay. So that's what he means. Tzrachim chadashim. That's what he says. נשב בבית ונאמר עוד ספר. אין מדובר רק בצורך של חפצים. גם הנהגות, right? How you, right? In ways you behave. ובדיעת החדשות, knowing news. היום כל אחד צריך לדעת מה קורה כל הזמן בכל העולם, ובלי זה הוא לא בעניינים. And then he quotes in the parentheses here. He says there's a pasuk in Koheles ועל הפוסק, ויותר מהמה בני, היזהר עשות ספרים הרבה אין קץ. Right? More than all the other things in the world, you should make a lot of books. Isa Sham Medrash, on that, the Medrash says there, V'yoter mehema b'ni, hizaher muhuma. Right? Be careful about a muhuma. A muhuma is like a big panic or a rush or confusion. Shekol ha'machnis b'toch beiso yoter mechavda al tzvarim. If you bring into your house more than the 24 books of the Tanakh, muhuma hu machnis beveso. You're bringing in a muhuma into your house. Okay, a very interesting thing. Right? You're just filling yourself up with things that you don't need to know. And I'm not here going to talk about what's reasonable to read, what's not reasonable to read. Everybody according to his needs and his spiritual state, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very complicated issue. However, we should know that at least as an ideal, right, the ideal is that a person should find total satisfaction in Divrei Torah. Right? That's the ideal of how we should be living our lives. That everything that we need, all of the intellectual stimulation, our need to understand, our need to use our minds, our need to find out how the world works, et cetera, we should be able to be satisfied with Torah. The fact that it's not, so again, we have to know, as I've said many times, we have to know what our madrega is and how we can satisfy our needs. And if we have, not everybody is the Vilna Gaon who can not do anything except learn, or the Chafetz Chaim not do anything except learn. Right? We all have all kinds of needs, right? And we have to know each person on an individual level. But as an ideal is that a person would be able to find all of the chachma and everything that he needs in the words of the Torah. Okay. And this is what he says, Beten Rishayim Techsa, as we said before. Okay. Umisha mitbonein roeh shekol tasiyat hatzrachim naseh absurd. And now we're getting to the point. This is the real point of this year, right? Every person who will see that this whole industry of needs becomes an absurd. Therefore, it has to be that it can't be maintained. This can't continue. It's going to have to reach a point of bursting. The bubble has got to burst. If every hour there's 5,000 new cars rolling onto the road, הרי זה אבסורד. כמה עוד אפשר? הרי האדם הוא מוגבל. A person is limited. The human race is limited. Right? There is going to be a limit to what we can handle by creating all of these needs, and suddenly we're going to find ourselves with so much that the world is going to burst. ועל הפוסק צדיק אוכל לסוב ונפשו ובטן רשעים תחסר, פירוש הגרושם, צדיק אוכל לסוב ונפשו, שהצדיק אינו אוכל רק כדי חיונו בכדי סובו. He only eats what he needs. ובטן רשעים תחסר, כלומר, לרשעים חסר להם בטן. They're missing a stomach. שקטן בטנם מאכיל אכילתם. Their stomach is too small to hold their food. מבואר שהרשעים רוצים עוד בטן. A Russia wants more, another stomach. אבל הבטן היא מוגבלת. But it's limited. וידוע הסיפור על סוקרטס, שפעם התהלך באתונה בחלונות כל מיני דברים יפים, ואמר שלא ידע שיש בעולם כל כך הרבה דברים שלא צריך, he didn't say, what a lot of things I don't need. זה סוד, okay, and here we get to the point, חיסרון גמור מביא לגאולה. זה סוד מה שמבואר כאן בגמרא. This is the deeper understanding of what the Gemara is saying. דכאשר המינוס תגיע לתכליס החיסרון, when the minus gets to the ultimate point of chisaron, lo yeh afshar lehamshich yoter, he won't be able to continue. Ve'az yavo ben David v'yigaleh et hamalchut hamitit. Then Ben David will come and reveal the real malchus. V'omek hadavar, and here, let's pay attention to this sentence here. Ve'omek hadar, what's the depth of the matter? She'oto chisaron hu habesis lemetziut amitit. There is the chisaron is exactly the basis of true reality. Because what is the chisaron is the fact that reality was removed. Right? The Kodesh Baruch Hu removed himself from the world, and he created this chisaron. So at the end of the day, the chisaron, the only way that the chisaron is going to be filled is with the mitziut amitit, and the more and when you get rid of all of the sort of call it the noise, all of the things that are getting in the way, the pseudo milui of right today, we're filling this empty space with all kinds of non-reality, not real existence, and therefore, right, that's preventing the malchus from getting back into the world because we're too busy filling it up with garbage. But once we get rid of the garbage, right, and that's what he's saying is that the malchus, that at the end of the day, right, there's going to be so much garbage that there won't be any. Then we'll have to understand that there isn't all the garbage is going to disappear. It's going to reach a point where it just can't sustain itself anymore. It's going to just explode, and it's going to be like the bubble burst. And there's now what's left. What's left is emptiness, and what's left is emptiness. So then the malchus it will come back and fill the place where it was. And this is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu had in mind when he created the world, that he will refill the world. But in the meanwhile, he created the world with all kinds of bechira chavshis and all kinds of possibilities of malchios and people going astray, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, Ben David is going to come and bring back the malchus, and it's going to be the perfect fit because it's going to be exactly what it fills the yesod of the chaser. He says, Kasher, and there's a very powerful statement here, and this was the top line here. Kasher Adam argishu chaser b'li gvul, magia zman shehu mahapech et hamabat v'shoef l'kedusha. When a person feels chaser, boundlessly, infinitely chaser, there will come a time when he changes his point of view and starts seeking for kedusha. And this, I'm just thinking a little bit about some of the stories we hear about the people who were hostages, right, in Gaza, right, and some of them, right, found, right, in the midst of the greatest hell and darkness, they found their way back to a belief in Hashem, right, because that's what it is, right, because once the emptiness is so empty, right, you feel that I've reached the end of my line. So then Hashem just fits right in, because that's exactly okay. Now that you have this empty space, and this empty space has been created within you by terrible circumstances sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's a bracha. At the end of the day, somebody who didn't have Hashem before he was a hostage and found Hashem as a hostage, so he had being a hostage was the greatest bracha that could possibly come to him. It brought him back to real existence. He was living a fantasy existence, and now he was zocher to have a real existence, right? And so magia zman shu v'az hu mechaber et atzmo lemetziut ha'ein sof, and then he connects himself to the infinite mitziut, u'memela yesh lo takol, and then he has everything, right? And that person who connects himself with the infinite mitziut will have he'll have his olam haba, he'll have real life, right? Where if he and that's what we bofen shemashe bemet chaser ba'olam hazeh, because what we're really lacking is achibur lemetziut amitut. The real lack is that we're not connected to true existence. V'zeh chisaron ha'ivit kirvat elokim aliyah shel Torah, and this is this chisaron. If a person would feel that. Will look into himself and say, there are parts of me that are not real. There are parts of me that are not connected to the Metziut HaMitit. There are parts of me that have a chisaron, but not looking for the true malchus, the true reality, but they're looking for substitutes. They're looking for cheap ways to try to fill that. Then they'll say, okay, but if I get rid of them, So what happens? What happens is that there will be a chibur with the true reality, and that's the ultimate bracha that a person can have, right? And so therefore, right, and so when we think about how, right, the malchus is minus, right, and that there's always, a need for more, and there's always trying to get more money or more power or more, a better deal, as somebody mentioned to me today that maybe Trump is the primary example of that. Oh, wait, another deal. I gotta. But now he's dealing with countries. Now he said, now his monopoly game has gone from houses and hotels to countries. He's moving them around on the board like all kinds of things. Okay, Peseder, but that's what it is because he's operating out of a total chisaron, but that chisaron is also going to burst, and then we'll come back to okay, what's going to fill the void? Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to fill the void. The David is going to fill the void, right? So let's hope that David HaMelech Mashiach ben David will receive the keys from Trump. Okay. Ve'al mevia Gemara pasuk, and this is the point the Gemara brings the pasuk. Kulo hafach lavan tahorhu. If you remember, the Gemara says, right, if you go back to the beginning of the Gemara on page, right, on the beginning of the shir on page Pei Hey, right, it says the Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, right, the quote at the beginning of the shir, Ein ben David bashi titapech chol hamalchus laminus, Amar Rava Mikra. What's the pasuk? Kulo hafach lavan tahorhu. It all turns, as we said, right, that the pasuk tells us in the laws of the dinim of Mitzara, that a Mitzara who has white spots on his flesh is tameh, right? If it's a ras, but if his whole body from head to toe is covered with his white, then he's going to become tohar, and that's the pasuk that the Gemara brings, that the malchus is going to turn to minus. It's the same as, right, the whole body of the person turning into one big piece of tzaras, right? And once everything disappears, right? Once his real skin disappears, and all there is left is tzaras, so then that's tahor, right? Let's see how everybody's going to deal with this a little bit. Vatam bedinze, right? Okay, so Moshe says an interesting understanding here. והטעם בדין זה, כי תומאס הנגע הוא רק אשר יש אדם שקיבל תומה. Tumas hanega has to happen to a person. If you're a person and you have a nega, so then you become tameh. V'lo kasher hakol niya nega, but not when everything becomes a nega. V'lo nitin lavchin klal b'adam atzmo. You can't tell that there's a person there. All you see is nega. There is a nega on a person is tameh. But if all you see is nega, so there's no person there. So if there's no person there, so there's nothing v'kabel tuma. V'efshar lahatim et ze al pi hasifri zuta hamuvah b'harbe b'achronim. Right? There's a medrash called Sifri Zuta, which is brought many Shekoslev, Sham. It says over there, right? Shekoslev Sham she'af shamet mitamei acherim, aval hamet atzmo tohar. Interesting chazal, right? The mate is tohar. If you touch it, you'll become tamei, right? But the mace is tohar. In other words, because in order to be tamei, you have to be a live person. Right? A live person can become tamei, but the mace himself is tar. Yeah, interesting idea. Okay, so that's what he says, is that the tsaras becomes so again, we know that a mitzvah is choshev kameis. A mitzvah is like a dead person. It says so you become completely dead. So you become completely dead. So then you're no longer who you were, and you're transformed to just the opposite of that which made you the way you are. Because he says, he doesn't bring does this medrash, but this is the idea. Tumas meis shaykh rakish yesh tziruf la'adam chai. Tumas meis is only when it's connected to a living person. But if there's no existence, ze gufa echetimsa shitgalei mitziut mitit. this is itself is a heichet timsa. It's a situation where it can happen that the true mitzios will be revealed. There's when there's no mitzios, that's the best opportunity for mitzios to be revealed, because there's nothing getting in the way. ולכן, המת עצמו לא טמא, כי הוא כבר החתימסה לתחיית המסים. There's a mesha. You know what a mace is? A mace is just waiting to be brought back to life. Right? So now, in other words, he's no longer. In other words, if there's a curve, right, or you go down, down, down to your mace, and then you move. Then you move up towards being right tchias hamesim, right? So you go down and up, right? But the turning point comes when you're dead already. Right? In other words, the turning point is even before you start becoming alive. Right? The fact that you're dead is the beginning of your tchiyah. Okay? Okay. Until you're dead, you're dying. Right? But when you're dead, you're no longer dying, and then you're becoming revived, right? Resurrected. Right? That's when you're dead. You're on the way to resurrection. V'chein b'negoyim. Kulo hafach lavan ze matzav shel heder gomor. Right? When it turned white, that's a matzav of absolute emptiness, removal. V'lechein ze echitimsa v'siba legilui chodesh. Right? So then it becomes a possibility that here, once it's turned white, we can have something completely new. Right? We're not going to have a person anymore. We have something which is way beyond what was originally there. V'gam kan. Kasher hamalchus nefeches laminus ze kvar heder gomor. That is complete nothingness. V'siba legilui shel metziut chadasha, and this is going to be the cause, right, the catalyst to bringing about the revelation of the new reality. And then Moshe puts parenthetically, "V'chein halavan hu tzeva shel nega." Why is lavan? Why is white the tzeva of a nega? Right? Why did Kodesh Baruch Hu create the world such a way that if you want, the Kodesh Baruch Hu said there should be tzaras in the world for whatever reason that Kodesh Baruch Hu had for there should be tzaras in the world, right? But why white? Ki halavan hu tamid tzeva shel reka. Right? White is always the background. B'chinat shechor al gabe lavan. Right? In other words, when we talk about black on white, right? Black on white, right? We don't talk about white on black. We talk about black on white. Right? White is the background, and black is what's put on top of the background. V'zet seva shel heder. So white is a color of complete absence. There's nothing there. Right? As we know, even in physics, right? The white things reflect all the color. Nothing is absorbed. None of the sun rays are absorbed and all reflected, right? Right? Because there's nothing there, right? So that's nothingness. So when the whole body turns white, so then the whole body becomes nothingness, and nothingness is the entryway to the true reality and the Malchus Beis David. So may we be zeicha to this true reality and the Malchus Beis David. Okay. Anyway, that's the idea. Very deep ideas here. And as I said, even I said 3 weeks ago, I hesitated to teach to go through this, but I hope that everybody got something out of it, that we understand a little bit more about how things work. Okay, we'll stop here for today. And the Mirza Hashem, as I said, we'll meet in 3 weeks. 2 weeks of Hanukkah we're off, and so on December 28th, in Mirza Hashem, we will be back. Okay.
Thank you, Rav. Thank you.
Jory, when are you coming to Israel, Jory?
First.
First.
The day after, basically. Yeah.
Okay. The Seder. Look forward to seeing you in person also. The
Me
Seder.
too.
Okay. Kol Tuv, everybody. Have a freilich in Hanukkah. And we should be zeicha to the lights of Hanukkah to illuminate all the darkness that's around us, because we all know there's lots of darkness. Okay. Kol Tuv, be well.
Okay.